Welcome back to another edition of Research Fantasies MLB DFS Pitcher Picks for Tuesday, April 4th, 2017. Opening day, really strong opening day for me overall. I'm not going to go too much into the details except for the fact that Jock Peterson was far too low owned, didn't make sense. Had him in our article, didn't mention him on our podcast. Jon Gray, and I'll get to this in a second because this provides us with an awesome opportunity today. Jon Gray, one bad inning, destroyed his night totally and completely, killed a lot of lineups. I thought it was going to kill a lot of my lineups. It did not necessarily because of how everything was built around him, but baseball's back. I'm as excited as I'm possibly going to be for baseball, so let's try to keep the momentum going. In terms of pitchers, I'm going one guy over 10, one guy between 9,900 and like 8, and then one guy under that. So tonight, let's start things off with Johnny Cueto, 19.8 on Fantasy Draft, 9,200 on FanDuel, 10.2 on DraftKings. If it comes down to him and Jake Arrieta, I'm sorry. I just think that Cueto has the much higher upside. These videos are generally gravitating toward the tournament play style. But Cueto's a guy who we could definitely consider in cash games as well. I know that Arizona Chase Field is a scary stadium to pitch in. Cueto hasn't done poorly there in the past. The Arizona lineup, to be quite honest with you, the only guys I see him having trouble with tonight are A.J. Pollock and Jake Lamb. He's been able to deal with Paul Goldschmidt pretty well throughout his career. So aside from those two guys, if he manages to figure out how to pitch around both Pollock and Lamb, he's really in for a pretty strong night, I think. We're talking, double-digit strikeout upside. That is the high upside. And I think going up against Patrick Corbin, his team should give him more runs than he'll need to get the win. So, and then on FanDuel, you can get the quality start now. They've docked points for the win and given them to the quality start. So you've got a pretty good chance at a quality start here tonight. Next up, let's go Lance McCullers, 18.4 Fantasy Draft, 8,800 FanDuel, 9,500 DraftKings, pitcher from the Houston Astros at home at Minute Maid Park up against the Seattle Mariners. Interesting thing here is that Seattle just doesn't have a very good lineup. You've got three guys in the middle with Cano, Cruz, and Kyle Seager. And really, to me, it's just Cano and Seager in that situation that you're really, really, really worried about. Like a lot of power guys, Nelson Cruz is susceptible to the strikeout. Just not impressed, really. I get that Gene Segura's up top. He's a tough guy, but I think McCullers can work around him. McCullers has the potential in this matchup actually to be the top raw point play of the day, because he could end up completely shutting down this Mariners lineup like his teammate Dallas Keuchel did yesterday, and we have a situation where he's got 8 innings, 12 strikeouts, and he's going to put up a big fantasy score. I think he's less stable than Cueto, so that's why I wouldn't necessarily put him on the cash game level. But if you're risky like me in your cash games, and especially when he's priced next to Kenta Maeda, right at the same price, you look at those two, and you know that Kenta has a much better matchup against the Padres, but you start looking at upside and saying to yourself, but are the strikeouts there? He doesn't have stuff like Kershaw, so I think you're going to see far more contact being made. With all those things being said, I think I just much rather pay for Lance McCullers in my tournament lineups tonight. All right, I referenced Jon Gray earlier. Jon Gray had 3 very strong innings where it looked like he was probably going to go around 7 or 8 innings, finish with 12 or 13 strikeouts and maybe a run. And his 4th inning, he just absolutely imploded. Cats are jumping around all over the place as we speak. Gave up 5 runs, ultimately didn't end up pitching any further into the game. Relief came in, coughed up a 6th run that was credited to him. So I think, you look at 9 innings of baseball, and in terms of the Rockies pitching as a whole, you had 1 inning where literally all the runs that they gave up to the Brewers were given up. And it might have only been 5 runs. Gray might have left the game, given up 4 runs, and then Relief gave up 5 runs, because I think the final score was either 6-5 or 8-5 or something like that. Well, the moral of the story is nothing has changed tonight about how we should approach this Rockies-Brewers matchup. We have Tyler Anderson on the mound tonight. Anderson had a pretty strong 2016 campaign, and I'm not going to hesitate too much to go back to him. Yes, he is a left-hander. That doesn't necessarily bode as well as right-handers tend to do against the Brewers, but you have to almost get back past the impression that only a certain type of pitcher is going to have success against a team. Just looking back, last year, he had a 2-run game where he struck out 10 batters against Milwaukee, didn't win the game, still ended up with 24.3 fantasy points. This is Tyler Anderson we're talking about. 11-7 fantasy draft, 6,400 FanDuel, 5,900 DraftKings. Are you going to tell me right now that you're not going to take 24 to 25 fantasy points for a guy priced under 6K, especially when a lot of the stacks I want to get to tonight are high priced? You're not going to put a guy like this in your tournaments. I'm gladly going to pay the less than 6K in the hopes that he could put together a reasonable outing where he only gives up 1 or 2 runs and he ends up coming through for us tonight. So once again, my top 3 tournament targets for pitching: Johnny Cueto, Lance McCullers, Tyler Anderson. Thanks for joining us today. Make sure to hit subscribe below to our YouTube channel. Head over to researchfantasy.com, sign up for our Major League Baseball mailing list. Head over to Facebook, like us there. Follow us on Twitter at Research and Win, and join us again tomorrow.